Good evening and thanks for joining us. This is NTD Business and I'm Paul Graney. The US government's budget deficit hit a record high last month as billions of dollars of stimulus checks added to government spending. Two Korean battery rivals have settled their dispute. The feud had threatened the construction of a new battery factory in Georgia. And Beijing sends a warning to China's tech giants. The regime slapped Alibaba with a record antitrust fine. Many say it's part of the regime's crackdown on leading tech companies. That and much more coming up on NTD Business. The Biden administration is pushing its American Jobs Plan as a way to boost American manufacturing. During a meeting with tech company CEOs today, President Joe Biden said the U.S. is falling behind in investing in the country's semiconductor industry.
China and the rest of the world is not waiting, and there's no reason why Americans should wait. We're investing aggressively in areas like semiconductors and batteries. That's what they're doing and others. So must we.
Biden says chips should also be considered modern infrastructure, and the industry needs investment if the U.S. is to remain competitive. His new infrastructure plan proposes $50 billion for the semiconductor industry, and Biden says his proposal has bipartisan support. A major semiconductor trade group commented on the investment. It says the U.S. share in global semiconductor manufacturing capacity is only a third of what it used to be in 1990, and it's largely due to subsidies from global competitors, putting the U.S. at a competitive disadvantage. CEOs from around 20 big companies, including Ford and GM, attended the event. And a full year after the pandemic began, the government just ran a deficit of over $650 billion in 1 month alone. It's the highest deficit ever for the month of March and the third highest of any month ever. The March deficit was $660 billion. The deficit for the first 6 months of the year also jumped to a record high, $1.7 trillion. There was only, and I say only, a $700 billion deficit for the same period last year. That's about $1 trillion difference between the 2 years. There was around $350 billion in direct payments sent to America this year, but a Treasury official says more funding from the stimulus package will roll out in the coming months, and that'll likely keep the government's expenses high. One of those added expenses could be cash payments to people in Central America to persuade them not to come to the southern border. NTD's Tom Ozimek has the details.
The Biden administration is looking at sending cash to Central American countries to stem the flow of illegal immigration. The move aims to address the root causes of migration from a handful of Central American countries where crime and corruption are rampant and economic deprivation severe. The White House's Southern Border Coordinator, Roberta Jacobson, said the program would be targeted at people in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. President Biden has called for $4 billion in development aid to Central America over 4 years to address the economic woes that push people to leave their homes. Republicans have come out in opposition to the idea of sending money to Central America. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said on Twitter, President Biden wants to try and buy our way out of his border crisis with taxpayer money. This insults millions of Americans who are out of work in our country. Republicans blame Biden's rollback of Trump-era border policies for the surge in illegal immigration. U.S. border authorities caught more than 170,000 people in March crossing into the United States illegally. That's the highest number in 20 years. Tom Ozimek, NTD News.
Stocks slipped from previous record highs today. The Dow falling 55 points, 0.16%. S&P 500 pretty much unchanged. The Nasdaq losing 50 points, 0.36%. Tech stocks today, the biggest drag, Intel and AMD, both down between 4 or 5%. It's after rival NVIDIA says it's going to produce its own CPU processors. NVIDIA, though, is up nearly 6%. Tech firm Nuance Communications jumping 16% after deal with Microsoft. More on that in just a moment. 10-year Treasury inched a little higher today, 1.68%. Oil inched up a little too. Gold, though, down about 1% today, just under. Like I mentioned, Microsoft is buying healthcare tech firm Nuance for $16 billion. Nuance is a leader in healthcare artificial intelligence. The company says it serves 77% of U.S. hospitals, providing services like speech recognition, medical transcription, medical imaging. It helped launch Apple's Siri Assistant. Walgreens also used this technology to help schedule CCP virus vaccine appointments. This would be Microsoft's second biggest acquisition deal ever after it bought LinkedIn in 2016 for over $26 billion. An American car maker is likely breathing a sigh of relief as rival battery makers SK Innovation and LG Chem settled a dispute and will move forward with a new factory in Georgia. LG Chem had accused SK of stealing trade secrets, but seems like they figured things out. NTD's Colin Fredrickson explains.
SK Innovation is building a battery factory in Georgia after all, after settling a trade secret theft dispute that threatened the $2.6 billion project.
As a result, that would have left several automakers with electric vehicles that they didn't have any batteries for. So you can imagine that Ford Motor Company in particular is pretty happy.
The U.S. International Trade Commission had banned SKI from importing battery materials, saying they destroyed evidence regarding the dispute. The settlement lifts the ban and forces SKI to pay over $1.8 billion. This comes amidst a push for electric vehicles in the U.S.
We've been falling behind on research and development and manufacturing.
One of the goals of the United States is to have manufacturing occur within the U.S. borders, and that would require lots of new plants, perhaps dozens of new battery plants across the United States.
EV makers such as electric boat maker Vision Marine Technologies are interested in using the batteries in their products.
It's difficult to get the batteries we're looking for from anyone like BMW, Bolio, or others. We're agnostic to batteries, so that plant and them building additional demand and supply is very helpful.
While they see the plant as a beneficial asset, they still have concerns.
There's, of course, going to be questions and concerns on the batteries, the efficiencies of the battery, the energy output of the batteries. Of course, Korea being one of the forefronts of battery technology, they'll be able to assemble and build a significant battery that can be used in the marketplace.
Governor Brian Kemp says the project is one of the largest job creation investments in Georgia's history. SKI plans an additional $2.4 billion expansion to the factory and wants to create 6,000 jobs by 2025.
Social media platform Clubhouse is the latest app to face questions over how it protects its users' data. Over 1 million user profile records were made available for free on a hacker forum. But Clubhouse says it hasn't been hacked or breached. It says its user data is already publicly available and that anyone can access it through the app's backend. A Cybernews security researcher says not having measures in place to prevent data scraping could be a privacy issue with the platform itself. Cybernews reports although no deeply sensitive data was leaked, it's enough for a cyber criminal to cause damage. New York State Pension Fund is restricting investment in Canadian oil sands companies. The state's comptroller says the companies are not conforming to the climate change agenda. Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli says the pension fund will divest more than $7 billion in securities already held in the companies and not make any further investments in them. Canada's oil sands hold the world's third largest crude reserves. But climate change-focused investors are putting pressure on the companies to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions or faced divestment. In December, the pension fund said it would help curb climate change by transitioning its investments to zero net greenhouse gas emissions by 2024. It's the third largest pension fund in the nation with an estimated valuation of about $248 billion. The Biden administration says it will create new well-paying jobs through the renewable energy programs in his new infrastructure plan. But it seems more jobs could be created in China instead, and those jobs could involve forced labor.
President Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure plan pushes for a green energy economy. Officials say it could create well-paid jobs, especially for displaced fossil fuel workers.
We want to make sure that we create good-paying jobs for all kinds of people in every pocket of America, and that means good-paying union jobs.
However, the president of the think tank Heartland Institute, James Taylor, says the move to a green economy would shift jobs from American conventional energy to foreign wind and solar power.
The rare earth minerals and other important minerals and metals that are necessary for wind turbines and solar panels they are produced primarily outside the United States and primarily in China.
Rare earths and polysilicon are two raw materials needed for green energy technologies, and China dominates both markets. Moreover, nearly half of the world's polysilicon, which is crucial to producing solar cells, comes from Xinjiang, an area notorious for its forced labor camps.
Not just the materials, but the wind turbines and solar panels also are produced primarily outside the United States and primarily in China.
Recently, both Republicans and Democrat lawmakers have urged the solar industries to keep China, especially Xinjiang, out of their supply chain. However, Taylor says that might not be possible in the near future due to the high pollution levels of producing these materials and low labor costs in China. Biden's Environmental Protection Agency administrator also said recently that most of the parts the U.S. wants to install come from China.
China just slapped a record antitrust penalty on Alibaba, many now saying it's a warning for China's tech giants. NTD's Evelyn Lee reports.
Chinese regulators slapped a $2.75 billion antitrust fine on Alibaba over the weekend. Beijing says it's for its monopolistic behavior and abuse of market dominance.
When the news finally broke, of course, it sent shockwaves across the business world and the finance markets.
It's the largest antitrust penalty in China yet. According to the New York Times, it serves as a warning for China's internet giants.
These internet giants have amassed so much cash that they rival the central government. So the government is determined to put a stop to them and actually to put a control on them.
The antitrust investigation into Alibaba is just one of the problems Ma is facing. At regulators' request, the $37 billion planned offering of Alibaba's sister company Ant Group was cancelled at the last minute in November. That was after Jack Ma publicly voiced criticism of the country's regulatory system. People's Daily, a state-run media, issued assurances that Beijing wasn't trying to stifle the sector. According to Lun, the regime has other intentions.
The government wants absolute control over the media. They don't want these internet giants have too much control over the media and over the population.
This move is part of the regime's regulatory crackdown on leading tech companies. Xi Jinping himself declared he will go after platform companies that hold significant market power and data. While the regime says it's to maintain social stability, Lun thinks it's for other reasons.
And the government found out that these internet giants have more influence on the public than the government propaganda apparatus. This is something that really makes the government nervous.
Alibaba issued a letter shortly after, accepting the penalty and promising its compliance. According to S&P Global Ratings, the fine removes the possibility of more serious consequences and a significant overhang for Alibaba shares. In a call with analysts, the executive vice chair of Alibaba, Zhou Cai, said, "We are pleased we are able to put this matter behind us, and that while regulators were still probing China's broader tech industry, they don't know of any more investigations into Alibaba." Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
Chinese telecom giant Huawei says that it'll invest more in businesses that are less reliant on American technology. U.S. sanctions have reduced its access to high-end semiconductors. Kira Lee reports.
Chinese telecoms equipment maker Huawei Technologies is making business resilience its top priority. It wants to develop its software capabilities as it seeks to overcome US restrictions that have devastated its smartphone business. On Monday, Huawei's rotating chairman Eric Xu said the company has no expectation of being removed from the US entity list. It's been used to limit the flow of US technology and products to Huawei and others. Speaking to analysts, Xu said the company would instead invest more in components for self-driving vehicles. He also said Huawei's global rollout of 5G telecoms networks has exceeded expectations. Huawei was put on an export blacklist by Donald Trump in 2019 and barred from accessing critical technology of US origin. That hit its ability to design its own chips and source components from outside vendors. Huawei says it wants to focus on forming a clear strategy after the sanctions' impact. Some Chinese companies stockpiled 3 to 6 months' worth of semiconductors, a move that's partly being blamed for the current global chip shortage.
Did you know the communist country of Cuba has two different currencies, one for the rich and one for the poor? It's crazy, right? But since the economy suffered major losses from the pandemic, the Cuban regime is planning to eliminate one of them. NTD's Phil Zhou has the story.
Communist Cuba is in big trouble.
Cuba is right now on the verge of bankruptcy.
Hurting from the CCP virus pandemic and U.S. sanctions, its GDP dropped by at least 11% last year. Imports, which are vital to the country, are down about 50%. A retired professor in central Cuba said, "This is cattle country, but there's no milk, butter, yogurt, or meat."
We are talking about a dictatorship where basically all industries that are unproductive are based and managed by the state.
Cuba has two currencies. One is convertible pesos, which is pegged to the US dollar, 1 for 1, is mainly used by the elites and tourists. Second is the Cuban pesos, which are used by most Cubans for daily transactions. It takes about 24 pesos to get 1 US dollar. The communist regime in Cuba is planning to get rid of the convertible pesos, leaving only regular pesos. People are concerned prices will skyrocket afterwards. Right now, a loaf of bread already costs 20 times more than it used to.
Right now, telephones and transport services, for example, are going to cost more, electricity too.
Gomez says the plan to eliminate one of the currencies was planned 8 years ago. The pandemic only sped things up. In 2019, the government converted 72 stores into dollar stores, where they only accept foreign currencies such as US dollars and euros via credit card, no cash. Phil Zhou, NTD News.
But Brits are rejoicing today as lockdown restrictions ease, many businesses reopen, people lining up outside retailers, hairdressers, welcoming back customers. Even pubs open their beer gardens to those looking to raise a glass. NTD's Neil Woodrow takes us there.
For over 3 months in England, we've not been able to get a haircut or enjoy social occasions with friends, family and colleagues at the local pub. But today that changes as the government eases limits on who we can meet up with outside. But first, the haircut.
When you're used to short hair, living with long hair is frustrating. My regular gents hairdresser was open early today, predicting a rush. They were hard at it first thing when I arrived. One gentleman was relieved to come to a professional barber.
Well, basically I had to cut my own hair, and it was just a nightmare because my wife wouldn't touch it just in case she done it wrong, so I had to do it myself.
Another was very happy for a reason other than the cut.
Well, my hair's been a mess since lockdown, and it's a good day because the pubs are opening, and that's why I've came so early, so that I'm one of the first in there.
And I was a happy man too as I got my cut.
Okay, so that's the haircut taken care of. Let's go to the pub. So here we are outside the Jolly Coopers in Epsom, and they're just opening after this long lockdown, in fact from last year. So I'm sure they are very excited and the customers are already arriving. I spoke with Angela, who owns the pub, with her husband, and Dan, the general manager.
Well, to be honest, it's been a bit weird because obviously, you're not interacting with anybody. Financially, obviously, it's been a disaster, not just for us, but for everybody. But from the staff point of view, everybody's been doing their thing, and it's just nice to get back.
She said emotionally it's been a roller coaster.
But like everybody, no one's not been touched by COVID. So there's, in the background, there's a lot going on for other people with illnesses and bereavements, and I think that puts everything into perspective.
Dan says it's really difficult when you're used to seeing people on a daily basis and then not.
Just being stuck in your own four walls and taking the dog out for a walk. Today will be, I think, a very, very busy day, and it will be really good to see some long lost faces.
The first man here today was Chris.
We've got a good spot, our friends are here, our wife's over here, and we're looking forward to our first pint.
This next man says the pub has had it so tough.
They needed the support, and so we thought it'd best come out and give it to them, come hell, high water or snow.
The pub is filling up with eager customers, joining with friends to share the day. Excuse me while I fill up with my lunch. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, the Jolly Coopers, Epsom, Surrey.
Still to come. If you live in Houston, Texas, you might want to order a pizza this week. Well, Domino's is testing a new delivery service. And coffee lovers in the Philippines turn to brewing coffee at home. It's even changing the country's coffee supply chain. That and more after a break.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies or call 1-800-509-8500. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
If you're in Houston, Texas, you might notice something different about your pizza delivery this week. Domino's is kicking off its self-driving delivery service in the city. The pizza chain says some of its customers will be able to choose to have their pizza delivered by Nuro's R2 robot. The Nuro R2 is a completely autonomous on-road delivery vehicle. That means no delivery driver to greet you at the door with your order. Instead, the robotic vehicle will drive the order to the delivery address, and once it arrives, customers will receive a special PIN to retrieve their order. Then you got to tip them. And Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams is working to create their new Dolly Parton flavor. Demand for the ice cream crashed the company's website when it was released last week. Some customers who were reportedly able to get the flavor tried to sell it on eBay for $1,000 per pint. Jenny says it will give a 48-hour notice via email and social media before strawberry pretzel pie is available again. The ice cream has layers of salty pretzels, sweet and tangy cream cheese, ice cream, and strawberry sauce, and sales will benefit Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. The program gives free books to children from birth age to 5. More film delays are announced in Hollywood. Moviegoers will now have to wait before they can see Tom Cruise's latest movie, Top Gun: Maverick. Paramount Pictures pushing its release from July to November. The announcement deals a major blow to theaters. It says the film's premiere was expected to be one of the biggest releases of the summer. Jillian Kitchener reports.
Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking.
The Top Gun sequel will not be jetting to theaters in July as planned. Top Gun: Maverick, which was expected to be one of the biggest releases of the summer blockbuster season, has been pushed back to November 19th. Tom Cruise fans will know that was the day Paramount Pictures had set for the release of the actor's 7th Mission Impossible movie. Now, that film has been moved to May 2022. Maverick's delay is the latest setback for this summer's movie theater rebound after a year of closures due to the health crisis. Movie theaters were devastated by the closed doors and are hoping that audiences will return this spring and summer as vaccines become more widely distributed. Those hopes were lifted by the recent blockbuster success of Godzilla vs. Kong, even though it was released on the HBO Max streaming service at the same time. But moviegoers will have to wait for Top Gun's high-altitude, stomach-dropping action flick for a while longer.
There's a new national pastime in the Philippines, brewing coffee at home. Now, some home brewers are even turning it into a business. NTD's Phil Zoe reports.
Former cafe goers in the Philippines are now brewing their own coffee at home. The Coffee Home Brewers Facebook group has welcomed tens of thousands of new members since the pandemic hit. Many are beginners.
So it went from people who had a lot of experience with coffee to people who were like, I really want to change my coffee drinking habits. And I think I want to say goodbye to instant coffee.
Just a year ago, Steven Velena was a total stranger to coffee. During lockdown, he tried some freshly roasted local coffee for the first time and started researching how to make it himself. Now he's selling it on the street.
I wanted to make a business since pandemic, lockdown, zero income. Siyempre, primary goal is to have income, but at the same time, it's to help these farmers.
Early in the lockdown, former cafe chain barista John Santos also started his own pop-up coffee shop. Now he has regulars who keep coming back for his homemade coffee.
Knowing that you're in the streets, it's not 100% that the ambience is nice, not 100% that the weather is good, not 100% that you'll have seating. But if they like your coffee, they'll keep coming back.
So how do traditional cafe owners feel about the new competition?
And for us, it's actually very encouraging that all these small home baristas, home cafes, ready-to-drink beverages made from home are starting to come up. Because it basically enlarges the pie rather than it shrinks the pie.
He says since the pandemic hit, they've converted their cafe into a stockroom to keep up with demand for coffee beans, mostly for home brewers. The home coffee drinker is now the new wholesale customer. Phil Zoe, NTD News.
That's the latest business updates for today. You can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.